I said transfer it now, my daughter Faith screamed, her fist slamming down on the table so hard that the water glass toppled, spilling across my papers. Her eyes were blazing, her face red with greed. I was sitting in the quiet visiting room of the nursing home in Montana, where I had been living for the last few years. The staff who usually brought me tea had stepped out. And here she was, my estranged daughter who hadn't bothered with me in more than a decade, demanding I sign over the ranch my brother Emmanuel had left me just days ago. She didn't even flinch when I said softly, "Faith, you abandoned me." All she cared about was the inheritance. The ranch in Yellowstone, the land worth millions, and the old stories Emmanuel had whispered about hidden fortune buried deep on the property. Faith leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "Don't play with me, Mother. I know what's there. Just sign it now before I lose my patience." But what she didn't know, what she could never have expected, was that my lawyer, Michael, was already in the building, waiting just outside the door. He had been recording everything. The doorknob turned, and that's where everything changed. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Who knows, you might just get a shout out in our next video. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe right now so you don't miss any of our future uploads. I wasn't always the old woman in a nursing home with nothing but time and fading memories. My name is Queen, and once upon a time, I had a life full of light. My brother Emmanuel and I grew up in Texas, running through tall grass fields and dreaming big. He was always the wild one, handsome, daring, and filled with plans bigger than life. I was the calmer sibling, the one who believed more in kindness and patience. But time has a way of twisting families apart. Emmanuel went west, working on ranches in Montana and later securing land near Yellowstone. I stayed behind, raised my daughter Faith alone after her father, Martins, left us. Raising her was hard, but I did my best. I gave her food, shelter, love, even when I had none left for myself. But somewhere along the line, Faith decided that money mattered more than her mother. Years passed, and she abandoned me when I could no longer keep up with her demands. She never visited, never called. My heart broke 1,000 times, but I told myself maybe that was the way life was meant to be. And then, last month, I received the letter. Emmanuel had passed away. My wild, reckless brother had left everything. His sprawling ranch, his land, and according to whispers in his will, a fortune hidden where only family could find it. At first, I thought it was a cruel joke. Why me? Why leave it all to the sister who had nothing? But when the lawyers confirmed it, I felt both overwhelmed and guilty. Word spread quickly, too quickly. That's how Faith found out. I remember the first time I saw her again, after so many years. She walked into the nursing home lobby like a storm, her heels clicking against the tiles, her hair perfectly styled, her voice dripping with false sweetness when she greeted the receptionist. And then, when the door closed behind us in the quiet room, the mask dropped. "You're going to sign it over," she said, tossing a stack of papers in front of me. "That ranch is mine now. Don't make me push you harder." I stared at her, my heart aching. Was this what my child had become? Had my years of sacrifice taught her nothing about kindness, about love? "Faith," I whispered, "you left me here to rot." Her lips curled. "Because you were useless, but now you're not. You're holding the key. So stop with the speeches and sign." I should have been afraid. Maybe years ago I would have been. But something about losing so much, about being forgotten by your own flesh and blood, it makes you stronger in strange ways. I had already called Michael, my lawyer, earlier that morning when the staff told me Faith had asked to see me. I knew what she wanted. Still, a part of me hoped she might surprise me with kindness. That hope shattered the moment she slammed her fist on the table. And that's when the door opened. The sound was small, a click, a creak, but to me, it felt like thunder. Faith froze, her pen still in hand. Her eyes darted toward the figure stepping inside. It was Michael, tall, calm, dressed in his usual dark suit. He held a folder in one hand and a recording device in the other. Faith's face went pale. I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling, but not from fear. From the weight of what was about to unfold. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about truth, justice, and the years of pain I had carried alone. Faith, Michael said evenly. I think we need to talk. The air in the room grew heavy. My daughter's chest rose and fell, her eyes darting between me and Michael. She didn't know yet how much he had heard, how much he had recorded. And I didn't know how far she would go now that her plan was crumbling. Would she lash out? Would she beg? Or would she reveal something even darker? And that's where I'll leave this chapter. But before we move on, let me just say this. If you're still watching without subscribing, let me ask you, what if one day you miss a story that could have inspired you or warned you about people who might betray you the same way? Don't wait until it's too late. Hit that subscribe button now. The sad truth is, only a small percentage of viewers actually subscribe. Don't be one of those who just scroll away and regret it later. Michael closed the door behind him with a quiet click. The sound was soft, but it carried the weight of finality, like the shutting of a vault. Faith's eyes narrowed, her knuckles whitening around the pen she still held. What are you doing here? She spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Michael didn't flinch. He moved with calm confidence, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her, placing the recorder gently on the table between us. Its small red light blinked, steady and undeniable. I think, he said slowly, we need to have a very serious discussion about coercion, fraud, and elder abuse. Faith's face went white. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She tried to laugh, but it came out strained. You don't know what you're talking about. Michael raised an eyebrow. Really? Because I just heard you demand your mother transfer her property under threat. That's coercion. That's a crime. I sat back in my chair, my heart racing but steady. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt protected. Faith leaned forward, her voice low, almost desperate now. Do you have any idea what that ranch is worth? Do you? She doesn't need it. She's rotting in here. I can put it to use. Her words hit me hard. They weren't just about money. They were about how little she valued me as a person. To her, I was already gone. Michael shook his head. That ranch was left to Queen for a reason. And until she chooses otherwise, it remains hers. Trying to steal it, well, the courts don't take kindly to that. Faith's mask cracked. Her voice rose, shrill, desperate. You don't understand. There's more than just land out there. Emmanuel hid something. He told people there's a fortune buried in Yellowstone. Do you know what that means? Millions. Maybe billions. And you think I'm going to sit here while you let her waste it? Her words hung in the air like smoke. I froze. So it was true. Emmanuel's old whispers weren't just drunken ramblings. He had left something behind. Something so big, so dangerous, that my own daughter was willing to break the law and break me to get it. Michael leaned forward, his voice icy calm. Faith, you just admitted motive and intent on a recording. Do you realize what that means? Faith's eyes flicked to the recorder, panic flooding her face. In one sharp motion, she reached out, snatching it off the table. Give that back, Michael warned, his voice dropping. But she didn't. She held it tight, her chest heaving, her eyes wild. You don't understand, she whispered, though her tone was sharp, almost feral. Nobody is taking this from me. Not you. Not her. Not anyone. For a moment, I saw my daughter not as the child I had raised, but as someone else entirely, a stranger consumed by greed. And then, just as suddenly, she bolted for the door. That was the breaking point. The nurses rushed in when they heard the commotion. Michael stood to block her path, and I sat there trembling, wondering how much darker this was going to get. Because one thing was certain, this wasn't about to end with Faith walking away quietly. And I was right. As Michael tried to take the recorder from her hand, Faith turned, her eyes flashing, and shouted something that made my blood run cold. If I can't have it, no one will. Before I continue, let me pause and say this. If you're still watching and you haven't subscribed yet, I need you to think about something. What if you were in my shoes, betrayed by your own child, with your only defense being the truth? Imagine if you missed the next part of this story, the very moment where lives could change forever just because you didn't click one simple button. Don't risk being left behind. Subscribe now. Otherwise, years from now, You might regret scrolling past stories that could have warned you about the dangers lurking even in your own family. Faith's scream echoed through the nursing home's quiet halls, loud enough that I heard doors creak open down the corridor. If I can't have it, no one will. Her voice cracked, trembling with a madness I'd never heard before. Michael stepped forward, his tone still calm but edged with urgency. Faith, put the recorder down. Don't make this worse than it already is. But Faith wasn't listening. Her chest rose and fell in sharp bursts, her hand clutched tight around the small device. Her eyes darted to the window at the end of the hall, and in that instant, I knew what she was thinking. Faith, no, I whispered, my voice breaking. She bolted. Michael lunged after her, but Faith had always been quick. Even as a child, she was the one who ran ahead of me in grocery stores, weaving between aisles while I struggled to keep up. Now it was that same speed that carried her down the hallway, her heels clattering against the floor. Stop her, Michael shouted. Two nurses stepped into her path, but Faith swerved, nearly slipping as she pushed past them. She was wild, untamed, driven by something darker than desperation. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. Watching your own child turn into someone unrecognizable is a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. And yet part of me still hoped she'd stop, that she'd turn back, tears in her eyes, and beg for forgiveness. That the girl I had raised, the one who used to braid her doll's hair and sneak cookies into bed, was still inside her somewhere. But hope is a fragile thing. They caught her at the door, just as she tried to yank it open. Michael wrenched the recorder from her grip, his face set in grim determination. Faith thrashed against the nurses, her voice shrill. You don't understand. That ranch isn't just dirt and cows. It's power. Emmanuel promised there was gold, maps, things hidden for decades. He wanted family to have it, and I'm family. Not her. Me. The words tore through me. She didn't see me as her mother anymore, just as an obstacle. Michael turned to me, his hand gripping the recorder tightly. We need to get this into safekeeping. She's already shown she'll go to any length to destroy it. I nodded, my throat dry, my hands trembling. Faith struggled, her voice dropping to a bitter hiss. This isn't over. You think a lawyer and a tape are going to stop me? You're wrong. I'll get that ranch. I'll get what's hidden there. Just wait. The nurses eventually led her out of the room, her protests echoing down the hall. The silence she left behind was heavier than the chaos. I looked at Michael, my eyes filling with tears. She's my daughter, I whispered. What happened to her? Where did I go wrong? Michael sat beside me, his tone gentle now. You didn't go wrong, Queen. Greed changes people. This isn't your fault. But deep inside, guilt gnawed at me. For a few days, things calmed down. Faith didn't return immediately, though I could feel her shadow lingering over me like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Michael moved fast, securing legal protections for the ranch, filing papers to prevent any sudden transfers, and placing the recording in the hands of the authorities. But even in the quiet, I couldn't rest. Nights were the worst, lying in my bed at the nursing home, staring at the ceiling, wondering where Faith was, what she was planning. And above all, wondering what Emmanuel had really left me. Because if Faith was right, if there truly was a hidden fortune in Yellowstone, then this wasn't just about land anymore. It was about something much bigger, something dangerous enough to make my own child willing to destroy me. The calm didn't last. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky painted itself in streaks of orange and violet, a nurse entered my room, her face pale. Queen, she said softly, there's someone here asking for you. I frowned. Who? She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the hallway. She says her name is Ruth. She claims she's your niece. My stomach dropped. Ruth, Emmanuel's daughter, the one he had cut ties with years ago after a bitter falling out. And now she was here, standing in the lobby, waiting for me. Before I go on, let me ask you something important. If you've been watching this story and you still haven't subscribed, why? Is it because you think you'll come back later? What if you forget? What if you miss the chapter where Ruth reveals secrets Emmanuel never told me? Don't fool yourself. Life is busy and chances are you'll miss it. And then you'll regret it, wondering what happened next. Don't put yourself through that. Subscribe right now and stay with me until the very end. When I saw her, I almost didn't recognize her. Ruth stood in the nursing home lobby, tall and composed, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders. She had Emmanuel's eyes, that same sharp, piercing gaze that could strip a person bare in seconds. It was like seeing my brother all over again, and the memory almost knocked the air from my lungs. "Hello, Aunt Queen," Ruth said softly, her voice calm, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. I gripped the handles of my wheelchair tightly, my knuckles white. "Ruth," I whispered, "what are you doing here?" Her lips curved slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "I heard about Father, and I heard about what he left you." Michael, standing close by, stiffened immediately. His hand brushed against the inside pocket of his coat where I knew he kept the recorder now safely tucked away. Ruth stepped forward, her heels clicking against the tile floor. Every step measured. "Funny thing," she said, her tone casual. "Father always told me family was the most important thing. But then one day he cut me out completely. Now I find out he left everything to you." Her eyes locked on mine. "Why?" I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I don't know," I admitted. "But it wasn't my choice." Ruth tilted her head, studying me. "Maybe not. But you know what this means, don't you? That ranch, it's not just land. Father always said there was more. He told me about the maps, about Yellowstone, about what he buried. And now, Aunt Queen, that fortune belongs to you. Unless—" Her voice trailed off, leaving the word dangling like a blade over my head. Michael stepped forward. "Unless what, Ruth?" Her smile returned, sharper this time. "Unless I claim what's rightfully mine." For a while, the three of us sat in a small side room, away from the curious eyes of nurses and visitors. Ruth told her story, how Emmanuel had once promised her the ranch, how he had taught her to ride horses across the property when she was little, how he had whispered secrets about hidden treasure in Yellowstone, as though they were bedtime stories. But then, as she grew older, their bond had broken. Some said it was over money. Others said it was over the kind of company she kept. Emmanuel never told me the details, only that he couldn't trust her. Now, looking at her across the table, I couldn't tell if she was here out of grief or greed. "You think I'm like Faith," Ruth said suddenly, her voice snapping me back to the present. "But I'm not. I'm not here to threaten you. I just want what my father meant for me to have." "Then why didn't he leave it to you?" Michael asked sharply. Her jaw tightened. "Because he was stubborn. But I know him better than anyone. He wouldn't have wanted strangers digging up his legacy. And if Faith knows," she leaned closer, her eyes narrowing, "then others will know soon enough. People who won't stop at threats or signatures. People who will take it by force." A chill rippled down my spine. Was she warning me? Or was she planting fear to push me into handing it all over? That night, I couldn't sleep. Ruth's words echoed in my mind. People who won't stop at threats. Was Faith only the beginning? Had Emmanuel's secrets drawn eyes far more dangerous than hers? The nursing home felt less like a place of safety and more like a cage. Every creak of the building made me jump. Every shadow outside my window felt like someone watching. I wanted to believe Ruth came to protect me, but something in her gaze told me she wasn't showing me the full truth. And I was right. Because the very next morning, as Michael and I sat down with papers to strengthen the legal hold on the ranch, a loud crash shattered the quiet. The front doors of the nursing home burst open. Faith stormed inside again, this time not alone. Two men followed her, their faces hard, their eyes cold, and their hands resting on the bulges under their jackets. I knew instantly what they were. Guns. Before I continue, let me ask you something that might sting a little. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, what's stopping you? Is it laziness? Do you think you'll remember to come back? Because let me tell you something, there are people like Faith and these men out there in real life. Greed, betrayal, and danger don't just live in stories. And if you miss what happens next, you'll miss lessons that could save you from the same kind of heartbreak. Don't make excuses. Subscribe now, before you regret letting this story slip past you. The moment Faith and the two men stepped through the doors, the room went icy. The air itself seemed to thicken, heavy with danger. The two men's eyes scanned the room like hawks, hands brushing the concealed weapons beneath their jackets. "Faith," Michael said, standing tall, his calmness a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding. "This is a nursing home. You don't bring threats here." Faith's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "I don't care," she said coldly. "I'm not leaving without what's mine." One of the men stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "We're not here to talk. We're here to collect." My heart pounded in my chest. I gripped the arms of my wheelchair like a lifeline. I had always feared physical danger, but never from my own child. And yet here it was, alive, real, and pointed straight at me. Michael moved between us, his stance protective. "You don't understand what you're doing. This is illegal. You're risking your life, and hers," he said, gesturing toward me. Faith laughed, a sound sharp and bitter. You mean my mother? She's in my way. And those papers don't change reality. That ranch, the fortune, it's mine. And nothing will stop me." The men shifted, their movements tense, like predators ready to strike. I could see the muscles under their jackets, the way they twitched with anticipation. And then Michael did something unexpected. He reached into his coat and pulled out the recorder. Not just the recorder he had confiscated earlier, but the extra backup device he had prepared. It wasn't just a recorder, it was live, streaming to the authorities and a private security firm Emmanuel had used before his death. Faith froze. One of the men's hands went to his jacket, but Michael's voice cut through the tension. "Step away. One wrong move, and the authorities know exactly who you are and what you're doing. You won't get away with this." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Faith's face twisted with rage. "You think you can scare me?" she spat. I wanted to scream at her, to beg her to stop, to remind her that she was my daughter, but my throat was too tight. Instead, I watched as the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Then, suddenly, the men lunged. Michael moved fast, blocking them, but one of the men swung a heavy fist at him. Chaos erupted. The receptionist pressed the panic button, alarms blaring through the building. Nurses and staff scrambled, shouting orders, herding visitors and patients to safety. Faith saw her chance in the distraction. She grabbed a stack of my papers from the table, the legal documents protecting the ranch, and darted toward the exit. "Stop her!" I shouted, my voice trembling. But as she reached the door, a security officer stepped into her path. One of the men turned, seeing that their plan had failed. The officer was armed, trained, and unflinching. Faith's eyes widened, panic flashing for the first time. She faltered, almost dropping the papers. Michael caught them quickly, holding them to his chest. "Not today," he said softly, but with steel in his voice. For a moment, the entire room was frozen in that breathless tension. Faith trapped between desperation and consequence, her hired men realizing that this fight was no longer theirs to control. And then, as I tried to process the shock, the building shook. Not from any explosion or gunfire, but from the sound of heavy footsteps pounding the halls above us. We all looked up. Ruth had arrived, and she wasn't alone. Her eyes were blazing. Her voice carried through the room as she shouted, "Step back!" Now, Faith turned to see her, a mix of fear and fury crossing her face. And that's when I realized the storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. Before I go on, a quick note for you. Watching this story unfold. If you've made it this far and you still haven't subscribed, I need to ask, why? You've seen betrayal, greed, danger, and a mother fighting for her life. Don't tell me you'll come back later. You might not. This is the part of the story that will change everything. And if you miss it, you'll regret it. Subscribe now before it's too late. Ruth's voice boomed through the lobby, cutting through the chaos like a whip. "Step back. Now." Faith froze mid-step, the papers clutched tightly in her hands. Her hired men turned, momentarily stunned by the force behind Ruth's presence. I could feel the weight of her authority in the air, the kind of power that comes from someone who knows exactly what's at stake and refuses to back down. Michael held the legal documents close to his chest, and I realized that, for the first time in years, I wasn't alone. Not really. I had allies, people who had my back in a way Faith never had. Ruth stepped forward, her dark hair swinging with each measured step. "I don't care who you are, Faith," she said, her voice cold. "I don't care about your schemes. Leave now or face consequences that you can't undo." Faith's lips curled into a sneer. "And you think you're better than me. You want it all too, don't you? You're here to take what's mine." Ruth's gaze sharpened. "I'm here to protect what's mine and what was left to Queen. If you touch her, you touch me." One of the men shoved forward, trying to assert control. Ruth didn't flinch. She moved like a shadow, a blur, sidestepping his grasp and shoving him hard into a nearby chair. He crashed to the ground with a loud thud, the other man recoiling. Faith screamed, the sound filled with rage and panic. "Stop her! Don't let her!" But Ruth was already between Faith and the exit. Michael, seeing the moment, seized the papers. "It's over," he said firmly. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Faith's eyes darted around the room, weighing her options. The hired men hesitated. The nursing home staff had finally begun gathering, pressing panic buttons, calling authorities, and watching in horrified fascination. Then Faith made a choice. She turned on her heel and bolted, not out the front doors, but into the hallways toward the elevators, dragging one of her men with her. Ruth moved after her, swift and determined, and I followed slowly in my wheelchair, Michael close by. The chase was chaotic. Voices shouting, alarms blaring, and the sound of Faith's heels against the floor created a cacophony that would have rattled anyone. But for me, my heart raced with a strange mix of fear and hope. Finally, I wasn't powerless. Finally, I had people beside me who were ready to defend what was mine. We cornered her on the third floor. The hallway was narrow. One side led to the stairwell, the other to an emergency exit. Faith's eyes widened when she saw us approach. The hired men glanced nervously at each other. Ruth stopped a few feet from her. "Enough," she said. "Drop the papers. Leave peacefully, or you'll regret it." Faith shook her head violently. "Never. I won't let her have it. Not her. Not anyone." She made one desperate lunge for the papers. But before she could grab them, the elevator doors opened, and 3 uniformed officers stepped out, their eyes trained, their hands ready. Faith froze. Panic flickered across her face for the first time. And then, in the blink of an eye, she made a sudden, unexpected move that made everyone gasp. A move that would change the game entirely. Before I continue, let me remind you, if you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, ask yourself, why? You've witnessed greed, betrayal, danger, and courage all in one story. Imagine missing what happens next, the very moment Faith's desperation pushes her to a new level. Don't be the person who scrolls away and regrets it later. Subscribe now. Don't wait until it's too late. Faith's sudden lunge toward the papers wasn't just desperate, it was reckless. In that instant, the world seemed to slow down around me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw her hand swipe forward, fingers brushing the stack of documents Michael held. The hired men moved instinctively to support her, but Ruth was faster. With a sudden, fluid motion, she intercepted Faith, knocking the girl sideways into a wall padded with handrails. Faith let out a strangled cry, her eyes wide with shock and fury. One of the men tried to grab the papers as well, but Michael was already stepping forward, holding them protectively, his face set with absolute determination. "This ends now," he said, voice low but firm. The uniformed officers, who had just arrived, rushed forward. Their presence made Faith freeze completely, realizing for the first time that the situation had escalated far beyond her control. Her shoulders trembled and her mouth opened to scream, but no sound came out. Ruth, breathing hard, stood over her, a look of icy resolve on her face. "You've made your choice, Faith. Step back before it gets worse." The air was thick with tension, every eye in the corridor locked on the scene. I sat in my wheelchair, trembling, heart in my throat. This was the moment I had feared for years. My daughter, unrecognizable, consumed by greed and desperation, facing the consequences of her choices. For a moment, silence settled. Even the alarms from earlier seemed distant now, replaced by the soft hum of the building's air system. Faith's face contorted, her eyes darting to each of us in turn. Then suddenly she made a sound, a low, guttural laugh that didn't reach her eyes. You think you've won, she spat. You think just because you have a lawyer and some security, you can stop me? You have no idea what's waiting for you at that ranch. Her words hit me like a thunderclap. I had feared her greed, her fury, but I hadn't expected her to know, or claim to know, the secrets Emmanuel had left behind. What do you mean? I whispered, my throat dry. Faith smirked, a cruel, sharp thing that sent a chill down my spine. That ranch isn't just land. There are things buried there, things my father didn't want anyone to find. Gold, documents, maybe even something bigger. You'll see. You'll all see. Michael's brow furrowed. Faith, listen to me. Nothing is going anywhere without proper legal procedure. And nothing is worth putting yourself or anyone else in danger. But Faith didn't listen. She was already backing toward the stairwell, dragging one of her men with her, intent on fleeing. Ruth stepped forward again, her eyes narrowing. Stop. Now. The man she was dragging stumbled, hitting the wall, and a loud crash echoed down the corridor. Faith froze, panic finally overtaking her arrogance. She realized that she was cornered, trapped between Ruth, Michael, the officers, and me. I felt a strange surge of courage. For years I had been ignored, abandoned, and dismissed. But now, as I watched my daughter's fury collide with justice and protection, I felt the power of truth. I had endured the betrayals, the years of neglect, and the lies. And now, I was finally at the center of my own story. Ruth moved closer, her presence like a shield between Faith and me. It's over, Faith. There's no way past us. You can either surrender peacefully or face consequences you won't survive. Faith's shoulders shook as she struggled with the papers, her own desperation making her clumsy. Then she did something I didn't expect. She dropped the documents. They slid across the floor, and one of the officers quickly picked them up, holding them out of her reach. Faith's eyes narrowed, and she backed away toward the stairwell, then bolted again, this time down the stairs at full speed. The officers shouted after her, and the sound of boots pounding the steps echoed ominously. Ruth and Michael exchanged a glance. She won't stop, Ruth said quietly, a note of warning in her voice. No, Michael agreed. But we've secured the documents. That's the first victory. I exhaled, my hands trembling. The terror wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope. There were allies around me, people willing to fight for justice, for truth, for me. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to face whatever came next. The following days were tense. Faith didn't disappear entirely. Rumors spread that she was trying to rally help, contacting old friends, and even strangers who might assist her in gaining access to the ranch. Ruth stayed close, protective, and vigilant, while Michael worked tirelessly to strengthen all legal protections, filing injunctions, and ensuring the land and fortune were completely secured under my name. I spent the quiet hours reflecting. Life had taught me patience, resilience, and empathy. Even when Faith abandoned me, I had chosen kindness over anger, love over resentment. And now, that choice seemed to matter more than ever. I also thought of Emmanuel. His whispers of hidden fortune in Yellowstone were no longer just stories. They were a challenge, a legacy, and perhaps a test. But it wasn't just about wealth. It was about trust, loyalty, and the kind of courage that endures in the face of betrayal. Yet, the peace was fragile. One evening, as I prepared to rest, Michael approached me with a grave expression. Queen, there's something you need to know, he said, lowering his voice. I've been reviewing Emmanuel's notes and the maps he left. There's more to this than we thought. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He held up a yellowed piece of paper, covered in handwriting I recognized as Emmanuel's. He left instructions for you to find the fortune. But it's not easy. There are warnings, and it appears that some of the property may be booby-trapped or hidden in ways designed to test anyone who seeks it. Faith might know some of it, but we don't know how much. Ruth, who had been listening, stepped closer. Her eyes were serious, intense. Queen, this isn't just about money. It's about safety. Whoever finds it first could be in danger. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Years of neglect, betrayal, and abandonment had led to this point. And now the real challenge was beginning, not just securing the ranch legally, but navigating whatever Emmanuel had hidden in Yellowstone. And as I stared at the map, a chilling thought struck me. Faith wasn't the only one who could be dangerous. The secrets my brother left might be more perilous than I had ever imagined. Because Emmanuel had been careful. Emmanuel had been clever. And he had trusted me to face what he left behind. But would I survive it? Before I continue, let me remind everyone watching, if you've made it this far and you haven't subscribed, think carefully. This story is about betrayal, danger, and family secrets that could literally put lives at risk. Don't risk missing the next chapter, the moment when the hidden fortune and Emmanuel's true plan start revealing themselves. Click that subscribe button now. Don't scroll past it and regret it later. The air in Yellowstone was crisp and cold, the kind of chill that sinks into your bones and makes your skin tingle. The mountains rose around us, jagged and imposing, their peaks dusted with snow. I sat in the back of the pickup truck, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching the landscape unfold. Ruth and Michael were in the front, maps and papers spread across the dashboard, their faces set with focus and determination. "This place is massive," I whispered, my voice almost lost in the wind. "How will we even begin to search for what Emmanuel left?" Michael glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "We start where he marked it on the map. There are clues, but nothing is straightforward. Emmanuel liked puzzles, tests even. He trusted only those who could think and act carefully." Ruth, gripping the wheel, added, "He knew Faith would come after it. That's why it's complicated. He didn't just hide money or gold. He left obstacles, warnings, and possibly traps. If she's already thinking she knows part of it, she could be in danger too." I shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of what she said. My brother, who had always been wild and unpredictable, had left us a challenge that might cost lives. We arrived at the first landmark, a clearing by a cluster of tall pine trees. The ground was uneven, covered with moss and fallen branches. Michael jumped down first, carrying the legal documents in a waterproof folder, while Ruth followed closely, keeping an eye on the surrounding forest. I wheeled myself slowly out, careful to avoid the rough terrain. "This is it," Michael said, pointing to a faint mark carved into the trunk of one of the oldest trees. "Emmanuel left symbols like this along the property. Each mark is a clue." I leaned forward, squinting at the carvings. They were intricate, almost like a code. Ruth traced her fingers over them, muttering softly. "He wouldn't make it easy. But if we follow the trail, it should lead to the first hidden location." We started walking. Each step was tense. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the distant cry of birds, and an occasional snap of a branch underfoot. I felt a thrill of fear and excitement. After all the years of waiting, of betrayal and loss, I was finally on the path to uncovering what Emmanuel had left me. But Yellowstone is not forgiving. Halfway through the trail, a sudden roar echoed through the trees. I froze, gripping my blanket tighter. Ruth's eyes went wide. Michael instinctively reached for the small flashlight in his jacket pocket. A massive elk burst from the underbrush, its antlers wide and imposing, charging straight toward us. "Move," Ruth shouted, grabbing my wheelchair and pulling me back as Michael dove to the side. The elk skidded to a stop inches away from where I had been, its nostrils flaring, hooves scraping the dirt. I gasped, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. That was too close. Michael wiped his brow, his hands shaking slightly despite his usual composure. "This isn't a joke. The wildlife here isn't just scenery, it's dangerous. Emmanuel knew this. The property itself is a test." We continued, moving slower now, every sense alert. Each marking we found was like a key, each step a puzzle. Occasionally, I thought I saw shadows flitting between the trees, small animals or maybe something more. Faith could be lurking, and the thought sent shivers down my spine. Hours passed, the sun dipping lower in the sky. We reached a rocky outcrop near a small waterfall, the roar of water echoing in the canyon. Michael scanned the map again. "The next marker should be near here," he said. "But Emmanuel left warnings. The terrain is unstable. Be careful. I took a deep breath. We're close. I can feel it. Ruth nodded, her eyes narrowing. Remember, this isn't just about finding the fortune. It's about surviving it. We started climbing the rocks carefully, the spray from the waterfall making the stones slippery. I felt the thrill of fear, but also a strange sense of empowerment. After years of being sidelined, forgotten, abandoned, here I was, following my brother's trail, deciphering his secrets, facing danger head on. And then, as we neared the top, a sudden snap of wood echoed above us. I looked up. A large tree branch broke under someone's weight, or something's weight. My heart froze. Michael raised a hand. Not us, he whispered. Someone else is up there. Ruth's eyes scanned the tree line. Faith, she said grimly. She's not done yet. Before I could react, a shadow moved quickly across the rocks above, disappearing behind a boulder. The forest seemed to close in around us. We had reached Yellowstone, faced the elements, and deciphered Emmanuel's first clues. But now, the real danger was clear. Faith wasn't just after the fortune. She was hunting us. And I knew, whatever lay ahead, it wasn't just a treasure. It was a battle for survival. Before I continue, here's a warning for you watching. If you've made it this far and still haven't subscribed, think carefully. You're watching a story about betrayal, greed, and danger in the wilderness, where every wrong step could be fatal. If you miss what happens next, you'll miss the moment when Faith's recklessness and Emmanuel's traps collide. Don't scroll past it. Subscribe now before it's too late. The forest was alive with tension. Every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves, felt amplified. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I realized Faith was not just chasing the fortune. She was chasing us. Stay close, Ruth whispered, her eyes scanning the tree line above us. She could be anywhere. Michael adjusted the map in his hands, tracing our path carefully. We need to follow the markers, but we have to be ready. Emmanuel left warnings for a reason. I tightened my grip on the wheelchair handles, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. All these years, I had lived quietly, hoping my life would remain small, invisible. But now, in Yellowstone, I was part of something bigger, something dangerous and exhilarating. I had to be brave. The trail led us to a narrow gorge. The walls rose sharply on either side, jagged rocks coated with moss and ice. A thin stream trickled through the bottom, barely visible from our vantage point. The final marker, according to Emmanuel's notes, was somewhere near a small cave on the opposite side. We'll have to cross this, Michael said, pointing to a natural bridge made of fallen rocks. But be careful. It's slippery and a fall could be fatal. I swallowed hard. Do we have to? Ruth's gaze met mine. We do. Emmanuel's instructions are clear. The treasure is on the other side. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. With Michael and Ruth guiding the way, we began to cross. The rocks wobbled under our weight, water seeping into cracks, making them slick. Every step required focus and precision. My heart pounded with each careful movement. Halfway across, a sudden shout rang out from above. Queen! Stop! I froze. My blood ran cold. Faith! Before I could react, a rock tumbled from the cliff above, landing mere inches from my wheelchair. The crash echoed like thunder, sending a spray of pebbles across the gorge. I shrieked, gripping the chair tightly as Ruth lunged to steady me. She's trying to scare us. Ruth shouted, her voice fierce. Keep moving. Michael kept his eyes on the cliffside, scanning for movement. She won't stop, he muttered. She's desperate and dangerous. We made it across, hearts hammering, hands trembling. The cave entrance loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Michael shined a flashlight inside, revealing uneven walls and the faint outline of old markings. Emmanuel's handwriting was scrawled on the rock. The truth lies beneath. I took a deep breath, steeling myself to enter the cave. I had endured years of neglect, betrayal, and abandonment. I had faced my daughter's greed, my brother's secrets, and now this. I could do this. I had to do this. As we entered, the ground beneath us shifted slightly. Loose rocks crumbled underfoot. Every step required care. The air smelled damp and earthy, mingled with the faint scent of something metallic, something hidden, waiting. Then, from the darkness behind us, a sharp sound echoed, a twig snapping, the unmistakable sign of someone following. I spun around, shining the flashlight. Shadows moved quickly, disappearing behind stalagmites. Faith, Ruth whispered, her jaw tight. She's here. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the cave. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a boulder rolled dangerously close to our feet. Michael shouted, "Move!" We scrambled to dodge it, our hearts in our throats. I felt the weight of every year I had lived quietly, every time I had been ignored or abandoned, pressing down on me. But there was no room for fear. Not now. Ruth moved ahead, signaling us to follow. The cave narrowed, walls closing in, the faint glow of the flashlight illuminating intricate carvings. Emmanuel had left something remarkable here, a labyrinth of symbols and messages meant to guide only the worthy. And then we saw it, a wooden box, partially buried under rocks, its surface scratched and worn with age. Michael knelt down, brushing the debris away. "This is it," he whispered. Emmanuel made it clear this was the first step. But there's more. Something bigger. As I reached forward to touch the box, a shadow flitted across the entrance. Faith. She stepped inside the cave, wild-eyed and desperate. "Give it to me," she screamed. "Now, or nothing will survive." The boulder above shifted slightly, sending small pebbles cascading. Dust filled the air. The cave seemed to grow darker, more dangerous with each passing second. Ruth stepped between us. "Faith, you've gone too far. Step away from the box, or you'll regret it." Faith lunged forward, hands outstretched. And in that instant, the floor beneath her cracked. A jagged section of stone gave way under her weight. She shrieked, flailing as she teetered on the edge. I froze, horrified. Then Michael shouted, "Grab her. Quick!" We reached just in time. Ruth grabbed Faith's arm. My hands braced against the wall, and Michael helped steady her. She dangled there, teetering on the edge of the jagged rocks, her face pale, terror overtaking rage. Faith's eyes met mine. For a moment, I saw something I hadn't in years: fear. Pure, raw fear. And I realized then that this wasn't just about money. This was about survival. The cave trembled again, just slightly, but enough to remind us that Yellowstone held dangers far greater than any human greed. And the real challenge, Emmanuel's true secret, was still ahead. Before I continue, a warning to anyone watching. If you've made it this far and still haven't subscribed, ask yourself, why? You've seen danger, betrayal, and life or death stakes. You've watched a mother face her past and fight for her future. Don't scroll past what happens next. If you don't subscribe now, you'll miss the heart-stopping moment when Emmanuel's secret is revealed, and Faith is forced to confront the consequences of her actions. Click that subscribe button before it's too late. Faith's scream echoed through the cave, bouncing off the jagged walls like a warning. Her arm dangled from Ruth's grip as she clawed at the edge, panic consuming her every movement. I could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation that had driven her from the moment she arrived. "Hold on," Ruth shouted, muscles straining. "You're going to fall if you move." Michael stepped forward, securing the loose rocks beneath Faith's feet. "Grab my hand," he commanded. She hesitated, but with no other choice, she yanked herself toward him. The boulder above trembled again, and a shower of small stones rained down, dust filling the air. I watched from the side, heart hammering. For years, I had feared her anger, her greed. But seeing her this close to real harm, it shook me to the core. It was a stark reminder. The price of desperation could be far higher than money or inheritance. Finally, Ruth and Michael pulled Faith safely onto solid ground. She collapsed, panting, eyes wide with terror. I didn't know whether to feel relief or anger. "Faith," Ruth said sharply, standing over her, "look at yourself. This isn't a game. People could get hurt. You've gone too far." Faith's lips quivered, and for a moment she said nothing. Then she hissed through clenched teeth, "It doesn't matter. I'll still get it. Nothing can stop me from what's mine." Michael shook his head. "Yes, it does. You almost got yourself killed. And for what? A treasure you don't even understand." I approached slowly, my heart heavy. "Faith," I whispered, It's not just about the money. It's about life, family, and the choices we make. You abandoned me once. You can't fix that by risking your life, or ours now. Her eyes flicked toward mine, a flash of recognition, or maybe regret, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. You don't understand. None of you do. Father left this for me as much as for Queen. You think you're protecting her, but I know the truth. You'll see. Before I could respond, Michael motioned for me to step aside. He and Ruth moved toward the wooden box we had discovered earlier. Michael carefully lifted it, dusting away debris to reveal the lid. The metal hinges were rusty, but intact, and the wood bore carvings that Emmanuel had made himself, symbols we didn't fully understand yet. Ruth leaned close. Emmanuel always liked to test people. Whoever opened this box first would have to solve his final puzzle. My hand shook slightly as Michael carefully opened the box. Inside were old maps, envelopes filled with documents, and a small, leather-bound journal. The smell of aged paper filled the cave, mingling with the earthy scent of stone and moss. "This is it," Michael whispered. "This is what Emmanuel left." I reached forward, lifting the journal. The cover was worn, but Emmanuel's handwriting was still legible. I flipped it open, scanning the first pages. There were detailed notes, coded instructions, and sketches of landmarks, all pointing to something hidden deep in Yellowstone. "Gold? Treasure?" Faith asked, voice trembling with a mix of anger and excitement. "More than that," Ruth said carefully. "Documents, secrets, things that could change everything. But it's dangerous. Emmanuel left warnings for a reason." As I read further, my pulse quickened. My brother had hidden not only material wealth, but also sensitive information, his legacy, his plans, even clues about past events he hadn't shared with anyone. It was as if he had trusted us to follow the path he had designed, testing our patience, courage, and integrity. Faith's hands itched toward the journal, but Michael stepped forward. "It's not yours yet, Faith. And even if it were, you almost got yourself killed trying to take it by force. That's not what Emmanuel intended." She snarled, frustration and desperation boiling over. "You think this makes you better than me? You think this is just a test for me? No. I'll get it. You'll see. I always get what I want." Ruth shook her head. "No, Faith. You think you're winning, but greed blinds people. You need to step back, or this cave and everything in it could take you down." Her words were a warning, but Faith didn't hear them. She lunged again, reaching toward the maps. And then it happened. The cave trembled, small stones falling around us. A section of the ceiling cracked, sending a larger stone tumbling down. We dove aside, hearts hammering, the cave echoing with the sound of rock against rock. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling fear mix with exhilaration. Emmanuel's challenge was real. The treasure wasn't just hidden, it was protected. And Faith had almost triggered the first serious trap. Michael steadied me. "We need to calm her down. If the cave starts collapsing further, no one gets the fortune." Ruth moved toward Faith again. "Step back. We're not here to fight you. But if you make one more reckless move," her voice trailed off, leaving the threat unspoken but deadly clear. Faith's face twisted, caught between rage and fear. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about survival or money. It was about choices, morality, and understanding the consequences of our actions. Emmanuel's tests weren't just puzzles, they were lessons. And whether Faith would learn them or fall victim to her own desperation remained uncertain. We spent hours in the cave, carefully sorting through the maps and journals, trying to decipher the clues Emmanuel had left. Each document revealed another layer of his plans, another twist in the path he had designed. Faith stayed on the edge, watching, her temper simmering, but unable to act recklessly again after the near disaster earlier. By nightfall, we had pieced together the location of the first real cache, the spot where Emmanuel had hidden his fortune in Yellowstone. It wasn't gold or cash alone. There were historical documents, legal papers, and even items of sentimental value that spoke to his life and the lives of those he trusted. I realized then that the real treasure wasn't just material. It was trust, legacy, and the ability to navigate life with patience and wisdom. Emmanuel had left us a final lesson. Greed could blind us, but courage, empathy, and intelligence could lead to true reward. As we prepared to leave the cave and rest for the night, I felt the weight of the journey ahead. Faith was still out there, driven by desperation. The treasure and the secrets it held weren't fully uncovered. And Yellowstone itself was a challenge, with dangers yet unseen. And then, just as we stepped outside, the wind shifted, carrying a distant, chilling sound, the roar of something massive moving through the forest. I froze, realizing that our struggle was far from over. Before I continue, let me speak directly to you. If you've made it this far and you still haven't subscribed, ask yourself, why? You've watched danger, betrayal, and survival unfold in ways most people can't imagine. You're about to see the next chapter where Faith faces the consequences of her desperation, and Queen begins to fully uncover Emmanuel's ultimate secret. Don't miss it. Subscribe now, or risk scrolling past the most intense part of this story. The rumble of the forest grew louder, shaking the rocky outcrop beneath our feet. Dust and debris fell from the cliffs, carried by the roar of rushing water from the waterfall nearby. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst, and I gripped the edges of my wheelchair tightly, feeling the tremors through the wheels. Ruth stepped forward, positioning herself between Faith and the unseen threat approaching. "Everyone, stay close," she shouted over the sound of cracking branches. "We have to move carefully, but we cannot panic." Michael crouched beside the chest, clutching the documents tightly. "Queen, whatever Emmanuel left, it's not just the paper. There's something here, something he meant to protect, and it's not safe. That's why the final warning exists." Faith, sitting on a boulder, watched the scene unfold. Her earlier rage had dissolved into fear. For the first time, I saw her vulnerability, not the daughter who had abandoned me years ago, but a person who realized she had underestimated the consequences of her actions. Then, out of the shadows, I saw it, a massive shape moving along the cliffs near the waterfall. My breath caught. It wasn't human. It was enormous, covered in natural camouflage, almost blending into the rocks and trees. I instinctively recoiled. What is that?" Faith whispered, her voice trembling. Ruth's eyes narrowed. "Emmanuel's final guardian. He designed it to protect the treasure, but also as a test of courage and cleverness. It's not meant to kill anyone if you can think and act carefully." I swallowed hard, realizing the weight of Emmanuel's foresight. He had always been clever, unpredictable, and precise. This was no accident. The hidden fortune had never been about greed. It had been about proving who was worthy, who could survive challenges with intelligence, courage, and integrity. Michael stood, holding the journal open. "Queen, the instructions, they show how to get past this, but it requires calm thinking. One false move, and the force of nature Emmanuel left could destroy everything and everyone." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. Emmanuel had trusted me. He had believed that, despite years of being sidelined, abandoned, and overlooked, I would rise to the challenge. The massive guardian, a cascade of rock and water, partially animate, almost as if the mountain itself was alive, moved closer. Debris tumbled from above as it advanced, threatening to block our path. We had to act. Ruth whispered instructions as we moved. "Follow the symbols, Queen. Emmanuel's notes show exactly where to step. Faith, stay with us, or this will take you down." Faith hesitated, fear finally tempering her arrogance. She nodded, her hands shaking. For the first time, she looked like she might listen. Step by careful step, I followed the carved symbols on the rocks, using the journal as a guide. Ruth steadied my wheelchair, and Michael kept Faith close. The massive form of the guardian moved in tandem with us, shifting and rumbling, but always leaving a narrow path where the markings instructed. Then, finally, we reached a flat stone platform near the heart of the outcrop. Emmanuel's symbols ended here, carved into the rock in intricate spirals and lines. A hidden compartment slid open beneath the platform, revealing the true treasure, a metal chest reinforced with brass, glowing faintly in the dim light. Michael lifted it, revealing stacks of gold, valuable documents, legal papers securing the ranch, and envelopes marked with instructions for charitable donations Emmanuel had planned in life. There were deeds to properties, letters explaining his vision for a legacy of justice and care, and even personal messages meant for me. I felt tears prick my eyes. Emmanuel's foresight, his care for me, his challenge, every step had led to this moment. And the guardian, the mountain itself, retreated as we approached the chest, as if Emmanuel had intended it to test our courage, intelligence, and patience. Faith watched silently, finally replacing anger. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she realized she had misjudged everything. Her greed, her impatience, and her belief that taking by force could win her the treasure. I looked at her, my voice steady but gentle. Faith, this isn't about winning. It's about understanding. You abandoned me, but that doesn't have to define you. You can still choose a better path. There's more to life than wealth. Her eyes welled with tears. She didn't speak, but I felt the first hint of remorse in her posture. She was finally learning Emmanuel's lesson and mine. Ruth and Michael helped me examine the documents, carefully sorting them. Each item revealed more of Emmanuel's generosity, his thoughtfulness, and the depth of his planning. He had thought of every obstacle, every challenge, and every risk. And now I understood that his true fortune wasn't the gold or property. It was the wisdom, courage, and resilience he left for those he trusted. Hours passed as we cataloged the treasure, ensuring every item was secure. Faith stayed nearby, quieter now, her earlier rage replaced by a tentative desire to learn. I realized she could still change, and perhaps one day, she would understand the full weight of her choices. Finally, as night fell completely over Yellowstone, we settled near the outcrop. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and snow. I held Emmanuel's journal in my hands, feeling the weight of his legacy, the journey we had survived, and the lessons learned. Ruth spoke softly. Queen, you've done more than survive. You've honored him, faced danger, and shown courage beyond measure. This treasure, it's yours because of who you are, not because of luck or greed. Michael nodded. And Faith, she's learning, too. It's not over, but this is a chance for her to reflect and grow. Emmanuel would be proud. I looked out over the Yellowstone landscape, the stars twinkling above the peaks. I thought of the years I had spent quietly, the pain of abandonment, and the strength I had discovered within myself. Emmanuel's final test had not been about the gold. It had been about showing us the value of courage, empathy, patience, and intelligence. And I realized something profound. The greatest treasure in life is not wealth. It's the lessons we learn, the bonds we build, and the courage to face challenges with integrity and compassion. Faith, sitting silently beside us, finally spoke. Queen, I'm sorry. I never understood before. Her voice faltered, but the sincerity was there. I reached over and placed a hand on hers. It's never too late. You can still choose kindness, integrity, and empathy. That's what matters more than anything else. Ruth and Michael exchanged a smile, knowing that the true victory wasn't just the treasure. It was the growth, the understanding, and the life lessons that Emmanuel's legacy had imparted. As we prepared to leave Yellowstone, the forest seemed almost to sigh in relief. The dangers had passed, the treasure was secure, and the lessons had been learned. Faith had begun her path toward redemption, and I had finally reclaimed the strength and recognition I had long been denied. And in that moment, I understood the ultimate truth Emmanuel had left behind. Life's greatest fortune is the courage to face it, the wisdom to navigate it, and the heart to share it with others. For the first time in years, I felt complete, whole, and truly alive. Before ending this story, let me ask you one last time. If you've made it this far and haven't subscribed, think carefully. You've watched betrayal, life-threatening danger, and the most incredible lessons of courage and family. Don't miss the chance to witness the next story, or to share your thoughts below. If you scroll past now, you'll regret it. Hit subscribe, because stories like this don't come around twice. The journey ends here, but the lessons linger. Courage, patience, empathy, and wisdom. These are the true treasures of life.